Hi, guys.
Morning.
Hi. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Amy, how are you doing today?
I'm
Really
great.
great.
Thank you.
Well, for everybody just jumping on, hi. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today. I'm Michael. I'm the Community and Partnerships Manager here at Dharma Doctor. I'm really excited for today's conversation. This is part of our community conversation series, so where we're spotlighting the people who are using Dharma Doctor in the field and the meaningful ways that they're helping shape mental health and well-being today. So I'm incredibly excited to welcome Amy Hawthorne to the conversation today. Amy is currently serving as the Corporate Director of Mental Health and Wellness at Canyon Ranch, an internationally recognized wellness destination with resorts in Lenox, Tucson, Woodside, and soon to be Austin as well. So she oversees the emotional and therapeutic programming across all properties, applying 20 years of experience to shape experiences for guests around the world. So Amy, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Michael. Lovely introduction.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. And I know that you and Dr. Saren have worked a lot together as well.
Yes, one of my favorite people to work with. She always leads me in the right direction.
And mine as well. Mine as well. So, why don't we start off if you would tell us a little bit, kind of about what drew you into healing work and how did this path lead you to your role at Canyon Ranch?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure like a lot of people who are in this field, I think it is something that I didn't choose, it chose me. And, I think this is just a path I've kind of always been on. I think in terms of Canyon Ranch, it's a really unique and special destination. And I think the combination of the deep, meaningful healing that happens here combined with the property itself, with the intention of the people who come here, with the level of motivation, and also, quite frankly, the time frame. Like it's a really people come in and out pretty quickly, especially at our Lenox property. And so I actually really love that as well because I think although it really does take a really special therapist to be able to do some deeply meaningful work with people in a really short amount of time, it happens to be one of my favorite ways of doing work with people. Who knew? To get in there, to do some really deep, hit it hard, and then they go back out into the world and integrate it. I love the model. So if I have to show up at work every day, this is a pretty amazing place to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no kidding. I mean, I guess it's so interesting because so many different destinations like this, they don't kind of come with that therapeutic lens. I mean, that's really, really unique, right?
Absolutely, it's unique. I think, there are wellness centers and people who we might be categorized as competitors with, but at the end of the day, they're really not doing therapy. And we, believe it or not, like we're doing really deeply meaningful therapeutic work. So even people that might be categorized or entities that are categorized as our competitors, when you really get down to it and you really look at the programming and what they're offering, it's not therapy. There's a lot of framework and it's very specific, and the same thing is offered to everybody. And people come to see us. We are able to connect with them quickly, help them get to the root of their real issues, and utilize and implement multitude of different therapeutic modalities. And of course, Dharma doctors are a piece of what we do. And we've found it to be an incredibly powerful way to get to people, to be able to come and have something this profound happen in such amount of time. It can really like rock people's worlds in the best of ways.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, I imagine most people also don't expect to kind of go to a resort like this. I mean, but it's so much more than that and kind of face their
Absolutely.
trauma.
Absolutely.
How do you kind of flesh that out?
Well, and I think, like you said, Michael, you're right. One of the number one comments we get from people as they're leaving our office, and I know this is true for all of us in all of our locations, is the disbelief with how much they got out of even just one session. Sometimes I'll routinely hear, as we'll all routinely hear, I've been in therapy for 15 years. How has nobody ever talked to me about this before? And so it really, like, for somebody to be able to come and have that level of insight and profound experience in such a short amount of time is, it's remarkable and unique. And we do it. I mean, I'll tell you what, it is not easy to find. Anybody who's gone to therapy before knows that finding a phenomenal therapist is difficult. They are very few and far between. And so it's important that I find people and that we're all involved in the process of bringing people onto our team. We are highly We highly have curated our team. We are intentional about who we bring on, and the people who I have are, I think, the best therapists I've ever worked with. I learn from them every single day. So I'm grateful, and I'm also glad for the time that I have spent, looking for people who I know are going to impact the lives of the people that are sitting with them. So it's not an easy process, Michael, but worth it.
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, I've had the pleasure of at least engaging with a few of your therapists, Sherry Felton, and the work that she's doing the performance space. And I could not be more impressed with your team. So
Yeah.
definitely highlight for sure. So I know, trauma is deeply personal and hard to define. How do you explain kind of what trauma is to people and how it shows up in the work that your work or the people that you're working with at Canyon Ranch? I'm sure you see it in a lot of different forms.
I think trauma, first of all, I think the word trauma is overused. And I think that's too bad because I think it's really kind of taken the meaning of it and the impact of it, and has kind of, it's just such a saturated word. And so I think in the past, we've thought of trauma as being only these really big T events, like these massive events that have happened. We can put our finger on it. I was at war, which is a trauma, absolutely. Or this event happened, which is absolutely a trauma. But what with the explosion of neuroscience, right? And people like Dr. Sarin and all of the people that are doing this work, we know that what trauma really is more often than not is an experience that somebody has over an extended period of time, usually within their families of origin, that deeply impact not only their experience of themselves, but then the way they go out into the world and do everything from relationships to work to manage stress and all of that. And so what trauma really is it can be different for everybody because it is dependent upon how your body interprets, how your central nervous system interprets an experience. And so something that could be of absolutely no consequence to you might be my biggest traumatic experience I've ever had. And it's not because of the event. It's because of how I interpreted and then internalized it and how my central nervous system responded to it. So the reality is that most all of us are walking around with those experiences. And unbeknownst to us, those experiences are actually are the lens through which we are doing life, and we don't even realize it. So, my job, what I think my job and my colleagues' jobs are here is to really help people more deeply understand why what they're doing is not out of nowhere. It's not unique. It's not just crazy and strange and weird and I can't believe this is happening, or I know what I should be doing and I'm not doing it. That there are real reasons why we show up in the world the way that we do. And so, I think it's our job as therapists at Canyon Ranch in the limited time that we have is to help more people more deeply understand themselves and why things are the way that they are and like where are the roots of that. And when people can do that, that creates oftentimes for people a massive shift in perspective. And you don't need years of therapy to have shifts in perspective if you can make those connections.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you and your team, you've worked with people from all walks of life. I mean, whether that's a professional athlete coming in for a program, I know you guys work with a lot of athletes, or somebody who's experiencing an extremely high level of burnout. What has this taught you about how the nervous system responds to stress, or more than that, trauma potentially? What's needed for really, truly meaningful recovery?
Well, I think the thing that I have learned about trauma and stress is that it's not something that you can always rationalize or think your way out of. And I think I'm a very insight-oriented therapist. I think insight is important. I don't think long-lasting, meaningful change can really occur if we don't have insight and awareness, but that is not all that is required when really doing some of that work and really trying to rewire neural pathways and really trying to help people reprocess these experiences because they are happening and then they are stored and then we are functioning from the subconscious, from parts of our brain that we don't actually have, that we're not going to be able to get to just by this kind of insight-oriented thinking. So what I've learned about trauma is that if you really, really want to process it and have quick, long-lasting results, it's imperative that you incorporate other strategies into that to attend to, I guess, for lack of a better word, like that subconscious component, which plays a huge part in all of this. And that's where, one of the places that I found like Dharma Doctor to be incredibly helpful and powerful is the incorporation of that into the work that we do, because it bolsters all of the insight oriented stuff. At least the way we use it at Canyon Ranch is it's an adjunct to that, and it's powerful adjunct.
And I'd love to talk about that a little bit more, how you're using them with your guests and how they're showing up in the greater programming.
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons I love Dharma Doctor is not just, the people behind it and the research behind it, but that and how simple it is. Like, there's nothing simple anymore. Everyone's like, sign up for this, do this, we'll track your data this way. Like, these are not that. So for all of those reasons, I love it, and they're a tremendous fit here. But what they do is immediate. And at Canyon Ranch, we don't have the luxury all the time of seeing people repeatedly. That's very rare. We might see people repeatedly during a stay, but we don't see people necessarily repeatedly. So if I can allow a person to feel that sensation of distress or stress or trauma or whatever it is, and I can give them something and allow them to have an immediate experience of what it's like to have your central nervous system downregulate in response to this, that experience is so powerful for people. So we incorporate it in, we have a program at Canyon Ranch, it's called Longevity 8. So this is a highly curated and very, very focused program looking at different domains, our 8 different domains of longevity. And we have included Dharma Doctor as one of the gifts in the bag that they get. And we teach everybody how to utilize them on a regular and daily basis to attend to that high level, but oftentimes very, right beneath the surface stress that people are just accustomed to walking around with. So they don't even realize that their central nervous system is upregulated, because this is just how we live life. And it's played a huge part in that program in terms of helping people with an actual tool to use over an extended period of time. People love tools, and this, again, like I said, is an easy tool. We also regularly use them in session with people in the moment. Sometimes we'll have people who are highly in distress, and we'll just say, here, hold these while you tell me about this. Sometimes I will incorporate them in and allow people to kind of have the experience of recalling a stressful event, holding them, feeling their central nervous system relax and calm down, and really kind of get that cognitive behavioral experience of, oh my God, this is what happened. I held these. This is how I feel now. And it's, most of the time, the experience is so powerful, they don't want to leave without them. Yep.
And I think that's part of it too. It's you guys are giving them such a deep level of care and compassion treatment in person, but you're also trying to give them the tools that they need to succeed in everyday life when they go home, tools that they can incorporate day to day. So I think
absolutely,
I will say it's pretty cool being on Dharma Doctor's team and getting calls from customers who have actually visited Canyon Ranch, brought their tabs home with them, and are calling in to tell us about their experience. And so we've had several of those, and
that's cool.
I can definitely say that people are going home with them and using them. So and I guess it's interesting how many people are familiar with this kind of EMDR based technology. I mean, are they surprised when they see it, or is it, pretty new?
Most people are pretty surprised when they see it. If I've worked with somebody who has done EMDR in the past, they will be able to make that connection. But for the most part, people are pretty surprised. I think the surprise is at the simplicity and the impact that something that simple can have, and how quickly. The other thing too, Michael, that I'll talk to people about and they love them for is like for kids. Like if they have kids at home, kids, trying to focus on work, trying to, learn to regulate themselves, which kids, they're not just born with that capacity to do. So people also, even if they aren't necessarily going to use them, they always have a niece or a child or a, who would highly benefit from them. So, yeah.
So what are the techniques that you found of being, the most helpful in terms of helping people really downregulate in the moment? I mean, using something like tabs definitely comes in. It's something you don't have to think about.
That's right.
Different modalities. What do you incorporate there at Canyon Ranch?
So, I mean, it really depends on the person and the amount of time we have with them and how, grounded that they are in their capacity to kind of, regulate, which most of our people, I would like, 95% of people that we see are highly capable of doing that, I'm not concerned about them not being able to go back out and kind of manage themselves. So luckily, we don't have to worry too much about that. But I have therapists who are well versed in everything from, they'll utilize EMDR techniques, not full protocols because we don't necessarily have the time with the guest for that, but there are protocols within EMDR that we regularly use. We use heart math inner balance. I know that my girls out in Lenox are EFT, somatic experiencing. Certainly, insight-oriented talk therapy is our kind of number one. And a lot of like internal family systems work, helping people to kind of identify, these different kind of parts of ourself, where this part came from, how to recognize that part when they show up, how to soothe that part. So really, it's like such a wide array. We do hypnotherapy here. The Dharma doctors, we have just a really wide array of things for people to try and to see.
That's awesome. Have you personally kind of seen the impact of bilateral stimulation really helping somebody in the moment?
Oh my God, yeah. I've seen it every moment that I use it with people. I just did, Dr. Saren usually comes out for us and helps with our Longevity 8 programming. It's such a blessing. And she was unable to, so I did our talk for us. I passed them out to people, and in the moment, like you can see people, I turn them on and they're like, oh, and like their shoulders drop and they're like, and even this guy he was a tough customer. I think for other people, he was like,
what is this?
These are amazing. Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting those words to come out of your mouth when you were looking like that. But it's like, I've never not seen it have like an immediate impact on somebody. You can't not. And that's the best thing about a tool like this, is that it's not up to you. You have a central nervous system. Like, you don't get to choose if this works or not. It just does. So very rarely do I run into people with whom it doesn't work. And I'll tell you that probably the people that it doesn't work for have some other things going on.
Yeah, right. More high level, certainly.
More high level, more very, very connected to the suffering, some of that type of stuff that you have to work through, and you can still work through it. But I mean, at first, when I started demoing these, I was worried that I would do a demo in front of a group of people, and the person who was demoing it for me would be like, no, I feel nothing. And so I always get really anxious. I have none of that anymore. Like, none of that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
You're really helping lead the integrative vision at Canyon Ranch. I mean, you guys are incorporating diagnostics, therapy, EMDR, extensive diagnostics, emotional wellness, longevity science. As we look ahead, what type of emerging trends or tools do you see really kind of taking center stage?
Well, I think certainly out in the world, there are, things like the psychedelic stuff that's emerging and trending. And I don't know that that's anything that's not in my world, but I know that is a big emerging trend. And I could go off on a tangent about all of that, but I will not. I think that a lot of the stuff like Dr. Saren is working on, like a lot of these things that are, like the brain mapping, the red light, these things that are just really like bypassing conscious thinking and really helping to induce these states of deeper relaxation without you having to do anything. Like, I think, people are really interested in these types of tools that are going to deepen their experience and support that like intentional conscious work that they're doing. And there's so much of that stuff coming out now, right? Like the vagal nerve stimulators. I mentioned the red light. I know, Dr. Saren's on the cutting edge of all of that. And so I think those are going to be the direction in which we're going, is going to be the incorporation of these. And I hate this term, but for lack of a better term, like these biohacking type tools and things that are going to really help people to deepen the healing experience. I'll also tell you that there is Tucson, there's a med spa opening, I know, and their focus is on bridging the gap between external, like beauty inside and outside. And I know they're going to be bringing Dharma doctors in there and utilizing them in that space to help to calm people before procedures, but also they're going to be doing therapy out of there. So really combining this and bridging that gap between how we look and how we feel, which I think is an incredibly novel and unique idea. And I know Dharma doctors are going to play a big part in that, which I think is a really unique and novel concept to incorporate mental health, to incorporate these types of tools into an environment that you might not have thought at first is going to have it there. It's called Lux Wellness, and it's coming soon, and they're going to be using the Dharma doctors. I'm really excited about it.
We are too. We are absolutely thrilled. So thank you for mentioning that as well.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to that partnership. And Karen, I see your comment here. We will get to all Q&As here in just a few minutes, but keep them coming if you have anything else, okay? And yeah, I know people are burnt out. People are stressed. Like what is going on from your perspective? I mean, things are clearly rapidly changing, and we live in a different age. We're burnt out.
And I think you would think that if just pumping, if Big Pharma just gave you more medication and that would make things better, then maybe we wouldn't see all of this. But clearly that's not the answer. So I think that it's a combination of so many different things. But what I am appreciating is that there is a trend towards the more integrative, the more holistic, ways of coping with the human experience. I think I see a lot of people who are really focused on big picture stuff, and I don't know that ever does anybody a lot of service. So when I'm talking to people that are really burnt out, we talk about keeping it close, not getting too big in terms of your fears and your worries and your attempts at controlling and manipulating. Bring it in, bring it home. Like, what can you have for breakfast today? How are you going to choose to spend your lunch hour? How are you going to treat your children? How do you connect with people you love at home? Like, keep it really, when people get too big, I think the burnout and the stress gets a little bit out of control. And I see that a lot with people lately.
Yeah.
But burnout and stress is a thing. It's a real thing. It's, again, another word I think that's been overused, this idea of burnout. But burnout's a really real thing. And it is deeply rooted in our central nervous system. As human beings, we are not meant to spend this much time stressing over psychological issues. Our stress response is meant to be reserved for things that are going to kill us. Nowadays, those are usually not the things that we're stressing about. And our brains aren't built to sit in a constant state of distress over psychological issues. Like, what's going to happen next? Do you like me? That was a rude email. Traffic sucks. Like, that's not what our brain is really meant to do. So when we're spending that much time in it, I'm not surprised the amount of psychological distress that we're just perpetuating. I'm not surprised how unwell people feel.
Yeah. No doubt. I can relate to a lot of those things that you just said. That's so funny.
So being human.
I know, being human is right. So, what do you think will really define the most meaningful approaches and sustainable approaches to healing and human performance going forward? Big one.
Sustainable approaches. I mean, I think getting back to basics in a lot of ways, love, connection, meaning, purpose. Like, these are all things that I think, and for many, many ways and many reasons, have been kind of stripped out of our culture in so many ways. And so I think, to me, it's like coming back to some of that stuff. And I think really more deeply understanding the impact of your central nervous system and how that changes the way you move through life. So I can know all of this stuff, but if I'm moving through life at a 10 all the time, I am interpreting everything at a 10. I am responding at a 10. Like, it doesn't matter what I know. So I think the incorporation of that real body work, that real neuroscience and the brain work, along with getting back to the things that we know are deeply meaningful to us as human beings, I think is going to be really important and sustain people.
You say stripped away. How do you manage stress day to day? I mean, you are in such a huge role, overseeing multiple locations with another one opening, managing mental health and wellness. That's a lot. How do you take care of yourself and still show up for your team?
The honest truth is that I feel like I've done a lot of work on my impulsivity, on my narrative, on my dialogue. I think I have really embraced the idea, the practice of mindfulness and of just not just reacting to what's happening around me. So I think it's taken me a lot of work. But look, I have children who I love, who I don't think anything that I'm doing at work is more important than. And I have a real sense of purpose in my life. I feel like that's a huge thing for people. I know it is. I talk to people every day who feel like they've lost their purpose, and it doesn't matter how much money you have or how healthy your children are, or if that's not a sense that you have, I know we suffer from it. So I think, like purpose and meaning and bigger picture and spirituality, like all of that stuff has helped me to have a different perspective maybe than I once did.
Yeah, I imagine so. So what's giving you hope right now? Whether that's in your role, what you guys are doing at Candy Ranch, maybe, experience that you've had with.
Besides happy hour tonight, just kidding. What's giving me hope right now? I feel hopeful about the impact that I can have on my immediate people. I feel hopeful about the children that I'm trying to put out into the world. I feel hopeful on an individual basis with people who I meet with. I feel hopeful in my ability to manage myself in relation to stressful stuff. Like I know that I can, and that gives me hope that like it's going to be okay. Hope for me is a bigger purpose, meaning, all of that stuff. I think a lot of us, or we get really caught up in like things are good or bad or right or wrong, or, this feels bad, so this must be really bad. And I really feel like I've come to a point where just because something goes wrong or doesn't go the way I think it should, it really has nothing to do with it being right or wrong or good or bad. Like there's purpose even in the suffering. It is something that I deeply believe and I have seen, and all of that stuff I think is really hopeful. Like none of this is just by chance.
What do you, typically for somebody who is just kind of starting on their own healing journey and really starting to recognize and see some of these deeper layers, what advice would you give them?
I think one is like get a good therapist, like get somebody. It's like you can't see the forest through the trees. And so I think it's amazing to have some external perspective. I would say jump into, whatever degree you're comfortable with, like the spirituality or the metaphysical or the purpose piece of things. I would think that, of course there's tons of books out. I always think be careful about how much self-help stuff you're reading. I think sometimes I tell people to stop. It's too much because the underlying message is like, there's something wrong with you and it will never be right. And you just keep, so sometimes I think that can be lovely for people just starting, but I can think also there's diminishing returns if that's our constant go-to. Yeah, I think it's just being open and being open to feedback and being curious and wondering, like all of that stuff I think is really important.
Yeah. It's interesting about the self-help books. I can totally see that. Sometimes I'll pick them up and got a few. I think we all do.
Yeah. A few are great, but I think,
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the human experience is so individual and unique to each and every one of us that, there's, I think, things that we can take away, of course, from books or from conversations, from direct experience with other people. But at the end of the day, our experience is our own. And so trying
Absolutely.
to find the tools and resources that can help you navigate through those things on your own, in your own way. So I think it's been really cool to see the work that the therapists in our community are doing here, the way that the tabs are supporting the work that they're doing. And just, could not be more proud to support Brad and his mission here. So this is a really cool place to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I love supporting people who I think are wonderful. And I feel like I don't have time not to, I think that makes a huge difference. So I agree.
So, I'm curious, are you guys doing some kind of group therapy work with the tabs at all?
No, I haven't done that. I know that you can. The groups that I have done would be like demos or in the Longevity 8, with a large group. So I guess in that way, yes, but that's not necessarily a regular thing. I will bring them with me if I have talks on certain topics. Stress and burnout is one of them. I will bring them with me and show them and let people demo them if we have time in front of a group. But I do know that there are protocols that you can do for like a whole kind of group experience. Aside from individual demos in a group experience, I haven't led a, Dharma Doctor, group meditation or something like that, which I know would be amazing.
Yeah, we actually control
Yes.
multiple tabs at the same time. So
Yeah.
that is definitely something that could be very cool in maybe even an outdoor meditation session.
Yeah. There's a lot of depth. Like I said, there's so much depth to these. You can use them just without the app, or you can add the app in. I just like the depth is just, it's amazing. You can start here and go all the way down here. So I love that.
Well, I'd love to kind of, open things up a little bit. If anything in particular that you'd like to touch on or, even from our audience, guys, if you have some questions, I know we've got one from Karen here as well.
Yeah.
And we are lucky to have Dr. Saren on the call as well. So if you have some specific questions for her, please, not to throw you out there, Dr. Saren, but thank you all so much.
These are really good questions, though, that Karen and Carrie asked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, are they doing this with older adults? I do this, I mean, I guess I don't know what's an older adult, but I mean, I see people from everywhere, from, college age all the way to like, 70, 80 years old. And so I guess that would incorporate older adults. And I do this with everybody, 55 to 95. I definitely have done this with 55 to 95-year-olds. And I think that, um, sometimes people, I'll hand them and they're like, what? Like what this, they're curious because these are curious looking things. But I mean, they're I haven't run into somebody, I've run into somebody who hasn't left and bought a pair, but I've never run into somebody who is like, oh my God, this is terrible, take this, regardless of age. Because I think, regardless of age, it's targeting, your brain and your central nervous system, and 55 to 95-year-olds have those. And so it's like the experience is profound, like regardless of age, has been my experience. Again, there's certain people who, might not prefer them over another thing, but in general, I've never considered age as being a barrier to using these.
And Karen, in my experience in working with older adults, they tend to have more physical pain that they're dealing with. And the published research on bilateral stimulation is about a 50% reduction in the experience of disturbing body sensations, which is pain, basically. And so one of the things I find that is most profoundly helpful in that population is a reduction in these distressing body sensations or pain in real time. And they can be very grateful for that. People they think that pain is a one-to-one. I've got something medical going on inside my body and it's sending signals. And that's not how this works. In fact, there was a really great article in Wired magazine recently about, scientists think they found the key to consciousness. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be good because I've been writing about this for 8 years, right? The salience network. And sure enough, it's the thalamus. And for those of you who are little neuro geeks, you understand that thalamus we used to think was this passive relay station that's taking in all these sensations and signals from your body. And then your consciousness is going, oh, what do I want to pay attention to? But that's not really how it works. The thalamus is picking what consciousness gets to pay attention to. So when we add an input that is this bilateral stimulation, it changes the thalamus's decision making. And this is the magic of this 30-second reduction in stress and body sensations that we're finding. So I think the science is kind of catching up. Like, Brad, you're a little bit ahead of the world here, but it's catching up finally, which is really, really exciting. But that's one of the keys in it. And that's one of the reasons why the older adults really also appreciate this. They also tend to have more of an accumulation of stress, and this trauma that Amy was talking about, it's like, if I'm now 80 and I have these things that never got cleaned up, it's like things that have built up, in your attic, right? That you haven't cleaned up. So they have more of that a lot of times to work through because they're not practiced at getting rid of it. And one thing that came up was, actually Carrie is asking, as a new therapist, can I hand the tabs to my client during a session, even though I'm not certified in EMDR? Absolutely. Years ago, I did the EEG research. A lot of therapists are afraid of causing abreactions, which is a very appropriate fear. And, but we've, from thousands and thousands of users and use cases and EEG research and everything, these really are safe to use. They're non-invasive. They're just vibrations, because people are like, what are you doing? It's such a profound effect. What are you putting into my body? And I'm like, nothing. It's just vibrations. But the way that thalamus and that salience network integrates it and down regulates your stress switch, that's the key here. And so you absolutely can use those when you're doing any therapy, and people can use them off the shelf as a consumer product outside of the therapeutic context. And that's really powerful as a therapist to say, hey, I care about you so much. I want you to get better faster and not need me for 20 extra sessions and to take 6 months to get over this thing. So if you could use these outside of session and help you fall asleep at night, or get your kid to stop tantruming so that you're not stressed out the rest of the day, or have those in your hands when you're dealing with that difficult phone call. It's really profoundly changing people's lives. And you're welcome, Karen.
This message that just came through from Mary Ludwig. Amy, I have to say that my brother and I spent a weekend at Canyon Ranch in Woodside this past October after the loss of my sister in August. We all agree that it was the most healing few days of our lives, and I have to thank you for the support and the overall experience we enjoyed. That's awesome. That must feel really good. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Mary. And I'm so sorry about the loss of your sister. I actually lost my brother last June, so my heart goes out to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was so excited to see that Amy was speaking because we had that kind of experience. It was so healing. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do, I guess probably anywhere, but when you go with that intention of getting, of healing or connecting or, I think it's pretty powerful experience.
And Mary, I just saw your other comment that you're familiar with Dynasty Electric. I love that. Please tell us
I've
more.
been listening to their sound baths since before COVID. They're amazing.
They are amazing. You know what? I just had the pleasure of interviewing them yesterday.
Oh,
Yeah, two just incredible people. Yeah, we
yes.
more thrilled to partner with them. We got some incredible people in this community. That's really
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to comment on something that Amy said earlier about the psychedelic movement. So I'm all about, I think our society is obsessed with chemicals and consciousness. And what I just said is, we a lot of times don't get to pick our consciousness. It's being kind of chosen for us, right? We're a little bit, us as ourselves are a little bit more passive in that than we thought. And it doesn't control what we think it's going to control. But I'm also about not using chemicals when they're not needed. And so when we're talking about this amazing like Dynasty Electric music and the frequency of the tabs, we can layer that in with red light therapy in a helmet and actually mimic psychedelic states without chemicals. So there's a lot of really, really cutting edge, Dharma doctors, they're, amazing, right? The tabs are amazing on their own. But when we're layering in frequencies, we really can have the profound effect of the brain. And we know people doing psychedelics have about, in some research, between a 16 and 32% chance of having an ab reaction, like a serious ab reaction, right? And I've also seen people using ketamine that have a wonderful experience at first and 6 months later come to me clinically depressed and they've never had depression. So it's a little scary. But if we can get people to have these profound experiences and really meaningful, trauma releases, Dharma doctors can be part of that layering of frequencies. And so we're doing that now in our clinics, kind of in a trial basis with some other technology. And it's really kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. Thank you so much. And Paige, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Paige Buck, and I'm a professor of clinical social work. And I ordered the tabs because I want my students to actually hold them, and see what it's like. I just looked at your website, Dr. Sarin. Do you have a list of some articles that I could, a quick lit review that I could just have to include? Because I would find those reading.
Yeah, truth be told, I have no clue who's doing my website and what's going on with it, and I have not been on there in years. However, there is absolutely a lit review.
Okay.
I'd be happy if you want to put your either kick your email to Michael. I'd be happy to email you even like a presentation on the history of bilateral stimulation and all of the research. In fact, we just we presented this over the weekend, the effects of bilateral stimulation on Brodmann area 25. And it's funny, I was sharing this with Robbie, who's on the call in the beginning. This is pre and post EEG, and this was at a neuroscience conference, AAPB, American Association of Psychophysiology and Biofeedback. And what's funny is, these are neurotherapists doing neurofeedback. And the questions were like, well, how many sessions does it take to get this effect? And I'm like, and my student just kind of froze. And I was like, okay, you have to understand, they're not used to seeing this profound of a difference in an EEG in 5 minutes. This is 5 minutes. And if you look at the area all over the brain here, so we want everything to be, it's kind of hard to see these yellow highlights. We want everything to be a tight circle between, these are Z-scores. And if you see how dysregulated this extra activity is, and in 5 minutes, how much regulation we're getting all over, and then the reduction in especially excess slow wave activity here. This is a 17-year-old, by the way, with PTSD. I mean, profound, right? And we have so much data, like so much data. It's not all published, but a lot of it is presented. So we're happy to send that to you. And it's really exciting.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, I see Megan on the call. Let's see, we've got a few partners on the call here that are actually in the Dharma Doctor app. I just wanted to call out and say hello. Hi, Megan. Sorry to call you out there. But yeah, it's great to have you guys on the call. And yeah, I did want to mention that Sherry Felton from Canyon Ranch, she also has a meditation on the Dharma Doctor app. Fantastic meditation. We have another one from the Canyon Ranch team coming soon from John. That is also fantastic. And yeah, we have 20 plus new sessions in the app. We actually have a new kind of streaming software that's set up now. So if you ever had any issues with loading speeds, we shouldn't have those anymore. We have new presets that are available in the app. So there's definitely some really exciting things to check out there. And I highly recommend going in and seeing what's new if you haven't already. And yeah, so we'll kind of just, we'll keep you posted on everything that we're continuing to do. But Amy, I wanted to, kind of give you a chance if you have anything else that you wanted to touch on today, or if anybody had any last minute questions for us, for either of us, any of us, be happy to jump in.
I just want to say one thing to Paige's comment on, I want to get these in people's hands. We're really at the cutting edge here of neuroscience. I mean, they seem simple, but this is neuroscience at its finest, embedded in these beautiful, lovely form factors that Brad has developed. And getting them in people's hands is essential. I think one of the things is also the interoception factor. To a point that made earlier, is like some people don't notice a difference, right? It's because if they have impaired interoception, like if they're severely on the autism spectrum, for example, or just, maybe someone who isn't diagnosed but's been an engineer their whole lives, right? Something like that, right? They don't really feel a difference in their body. But I've had people say, I don't feel a difference, but their body tracking shows otherwise. So we'll see on an aura ring that something's regulated, and people will be like, if they don't have interoception, it doesn't mean it's not necessarily working. But the best thing you can do when you get them in people's hands is say, hey, just think of something stressful, get it in your mind. You don't have to tell me what it is. And how stressful, 0 to 10, where do you feel that in your body? And then you can get a quick SUD and body sensation rating. That's when you can watch it go down. And if it doesn't right away, this is why we have multiple frequencies in the devices, because there's a frequency in either the 3 that are pre-programmed, or we can go to the app and get fancy with them. There's a frequency that will work, and it's person dependent, and it's also situation dependent. So if someone's a blue person most of the time, right, kind of middle of the range, but they like intense blue, if they're really angry, they might need to go up a little faster to help them regulate, depending on where they are on that stress switch in fight or flight. So just some tips there. But if you do that quick SUD and body sensation rating, you'll see why the research of over 1,000 people shows a 62% reduction in stress and a 50% reduction in body sensations. And you will get it reliably, and it will be like a slam dunk magic. We could publish thousands of articles on this, and we would get an effect every time.
I have a question I wanted to ask. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, sorry, I was on the move and in my car and didn't know how to work Zoom on my phone, but back on my computer. Yeah, so I really appreciated the question about, can you do this even if you're not EMDR trained? I'm EMDR trained and I use them all the time, but I also supervise a lot of residents. And, I've been sort of reluctant to tell them, like, get these tappers, use them with your clients, because I didn't really know the ethics around. And I always talk about how, like, bilateral stim isn't EMDR, it's a part of EMDR. So is there anything you would caution against in terms of telling my clients to buy them, or telling residents to get them and use them if they're not trained in some of the somatic therapies? I mean, obviously not with somebody who's like super, unstable, but anything besides that.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Megan. I think the thing that people get confused is because they pair bilateral stimulation not as an extract of EMDR, but they think that that's EMDR. They think, oh, I need these to process my trauma. The thing that I would say, we say, don't do this, is we're not having you take these home so that you can add eye movements to it and process your trauma without a therapist. No, do not do that, right? But just the effect of the bilateral stimulation alone is very, very regulating if you're on the right frequency to, almost everyone. So we want this for nervous system regulation. So we think of this as a substitution for, we're telling people to try to breathe all the time or use cognitive strategies or whatever. This is what we want to do first before they try those other things. Because as you know, when people have, you think of a stress switch from 0 to 10, people go up on that stress switch, right? What happens is they lose access to their breath. They lose access to their higher order thinking. They lose access to their appropriate positive filter, right? And this is when all of the cognitive things and even some of the somatic things break down. And so we want to use those first before we try the other strategies. And we want to use them just for that regulation, but not to go deep into trauma processing, because that's what can create an abreaction. If I'm getting more flooded, then I'm able to process that trauma quickly. And that really does take the expertise of a trained therapist, especially if somebody has profound trauma.
Yeah, so I think like in EMDR language, it would be like you're using it for resourcing and down regulating the nervous system, but not the actual reprocessing part.
Yeah, right. And the other thing about EMDR, I'll say, is I think the tabs are very misunderstood and also underused. So we use the tabs the entire session. So when someone comes in and does their history, I want them in their hands. I want to find the frequency that's the best for them in the moment. And I want them in their hands, because why am I not giving them that therapeutic desensitization effect? If they just come in and open up Pandora's box and tell me all the stuff in their life that they need to process and blah, 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 and then our hour's up and we close it down and they go on their merry way and then they can't sleep that night and they're dysregulated, right? I want them to get that therapeutic benefit from the tabs the first session. And then in subsequent sessions, when we're doing all the other phases of EMDR, they are on almost the entire time. And then what we toggle back and forth in phase 4 is I add the eye movements and I pull the eye movements back. So they're on actually the entire time.
And I mean, Amy Hawthorne, you can probably speak to this too. I mean, you're using them in a non-EMDR, setting, really.
Oh, yeah. I mean, exactly what Dr. Sarin just said. I think I agree. I think a lot of times bilateral stimulation is used interchangeably with EMDR. I mean, I'm not EMDR certified, and I use them all the time, and I use them in the way that Dr. Sarin just described. And so they've been incredibly helpful in that way.
Thank you, Megan, for your question. And Paige says she's used them and experienced this almost immediately. Awesome.
That's great. Yeah. It's a reliable effect, and we really want to kind of transcend belief. Like Amy said earlier, and this is brilliant, Amy, yeah, insight is wonderful, right? But you don't have to believe in this for it to work. It just works, right? Like I don't have to believe in gravity, but if I drop this pen, it's going to follow this law of the universe. And when we're really impacting the way our body is regulating itself in real time, and this is a profound, brilliant, amazing way to do it, and an inexpensive way to do it too, right? You could have embedded this technology into a contraption, and charged people $5,000 for it, and they still would have bought it, right? Because of the profound effects. But it's just really great. I mean, and it's very, very, very regulating, and it follows the laws of how, our brains and bodies work. And so you don't have to get people's buy-in or belief. It just works.
All right, guys. Every time I, think I'm going to close out, I get another good question. Thank you all so much. Let's see. So I'm EMDR certified, and want to share that those who are EMDR trained or know basics of bilateral movements supporting the nervous system does suffice. It's about helping clients. Thank you, Veronica. And Robbie says, many of the individuals I use them with, and by the way, guys, if you feel free to chat, if you want to, chat with us directly, and share your story. So Robbie says, yes, many of the individuals I use them with at Canyon Ranch. I love them. I love using them as a focal point for mindfulness practice. It draws their attention and they find it easier than something like focusing on the breath. We hear that a lot as well. And gosh, thank you guys so much. Apparently I need some glasses. I cannot read anymore. Thank you for your patience in those comments. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing. Anything else from you two ladies? Dr. Sarin, Amy, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, it's so wonderful to see you all the time, and everyone else for showing up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Amy, you're wonderful. Grateful to have you. Grateful to have you both Amy's here.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.